strategies to increase Airman and Guardian utilization of GAIN. Develop plan, which is one. Develop plan to improve communications about innovation ecosystem tools, crowd vector vision, practical within the context of GAIN, and to identify value-driven use cases and for communication to stakeholders. So I've put those up here as categories. I think Spark Tank falls under one of those, but we're specifically tasked with we got to make some progress on the design for 24. So I'm putting that up there with our objectives, even though it's probably also embedded here in our deliverables. So just going through this, I think we've hit most of these. So we have things like the MPO and the PML and RPA projects and open call model and all that. So I'm gonna move us over here, and so that we can talk about kind of some of the key work, kind of the key things we probably made significant progress on as a group. And I just want us to kind of like figure out where those fit, and then document any of the kind of the key expectations or next steps that we think we agreed to coming out of this meeting. And clearly we'll go back to the notes and do other things to flush this out, but I think it's just probably a good way for us to wrap this up, and also if we have any additional ideas on next steps or responsibilities, this is our chance to kind of get to that. So the PPSM and GAIN open call, which probably most clearly fits under the value-driven use cases component.
Well, it's also a plan to communicate about end-to-end tools, right? Because you're within the content of GAIN.
Within the context of GAIN, yeah. I mean, I think that
It's a little bit
we want to communicate about kind of the improvements of open call, and then that gives us an opportunity to kind of differentiate between tools and the role of GAIN itself. So I agree that it fits here too.
So I would say PPSM and GAIN is under where you said it would be, but our actions that we need to happen after this is to advocate for the tools in the campaigns in which we've identified new ways to use that for, and that has to get folded into our strategy.
Okay, so we covered the PPSM in open call, right? And key next steps for this. One is that we've agreed that it needs probably further development and testing, right?
So we agreed on using common language, not PPSM, making it, keep it simple, stupid.
That I would just bucket that under further testing and development.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't to get.
Well, that goes to the common.
We have that in the notes. I
Yeah.
think let's try to kind of keep the high level. What we
Well, if
agreed
it's
to.
not there, I will forget to put that in my report.
We have it in the
too.
notes, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Several spots.
Trying to let's try to do 30,000 and 15,000,
Okay.
like and not be ground level,
Okay.
if we can. We'll do our best. Okay.
Okay.
And so if you say something like that, we think, okay, that we're covered there. Then
Yeah.
we will.
Yeah, just
Okay,
capture it
cool.
in the notes, okay.
We also, I think, Joe's the one who picked up that we identified that this would be used as our model for
SparkNet.
for Spark Tank. Okay. Any other big, and then we talked about using this. I don't know how to, over here. This was key concept to promote GAIN versus crowd vector versus vision, right? So these two things exist. They're not exactly the same thing. So this gives us an opportunity to explain, well, one operates one way and one operates another way, so they're not the exact same thing, right? So that people aren't saying that, well, why do we have two things that do the exact same thing? What else goes into anything else? Key high level things,
MPO and bots, are they value driven use case?
yes, so MPO PML, but so you're moving us into the next, a new,
I guess so.
yeah, so anything else for PPSM open call, very high level. Well, okay, we can always come back to it.
Well,
if
the
we come back.
rebranding.
Rebranding, I think was.
Oh, cause that was open call. It was part of open call.
So we won't treat that as its own thing, okay, so
Well, it's, if you're
rebranding.
gonna try to keep it categorized, open call is right under PPSM, cause you did a /, so it just kinda makes sense to
Okay.
keep them nested together.
I'm gonna. I wanna put the open call rebranding here. Okay, we reviewed, so we at least discussed current options for new names, right?
And consider doing a campaign about it.
Yeah, talked about the history of it. Future of it. All the parameters that go into the decision of the names.
So are we going to recommend a campaign? We committed to that, right, as a
Yes.
group? Okay, so we're recommend a campaign. What we call a naming campaign or naming challenge. Okay, and we're gonna document the history or educate, let's see. And then I would say that this person goes into there too. And I would say it also does this. Anything else we wanna add? No? Okay.
Under the PPSM, does that arrow to the right into Spark Tank on top?
It does. I think let's see. I captured it here. We'll probably just create our own list for Spartan 24 of some kind of key deliverables. This is really more of a deliverable than it was our core objectives with the meeting. Okay. So let's talk about the PMO projects. The PML PMO. So we're gonna build in game, we're gonna build prototype. right?
Yes, initiative page with your five different use cases.
With initiative. FAQ. Discussion. Product. Something else.
Photo from yesterday.
1, 2, 3, 4. Support. Oh, that. And then we're gonna connect. We're gonna connect to other. We're gonna connect to other. Connect to A3 in SharePoint, and we're gonna connect to. Oh, the other one, Dave, was the problem sensing, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna connect to other content. And then we're still working on the prototype of the PML itself.
Yes.
So that was more like, I think the next discussion was to find a new set of testers, right? Who are gonna go in
Yeah.
and test it. Okay. Probably covers it mostly. We might have some other things in our notes that we can add to that. But we definitely agreed that like the A3 and the SharePoint is kind of on a path right now. We're not gonna hinder or impede that. We're gonna find ways to support it. Okay. All right. Okay, RPA. And this one, if this is 1, 2, 3, I think I identified this in the contract proposal, but this is also impacting number 1. So this is 1 and 3. This is also 1 and 3. Okay, so RPA, we talked about the same thing, the community setup, right? So this is our community template. We talked about connecting to other resources. And then we discussed 3, would we call them challenges? We're gonna support
Customers
3
or-
lines of effort maybe?
Yeah,
What
was
we-
that the unit training and reserve travel, or? was
Yes.
that something
Unit
else?
training
Yeah,
manager.
so let's call that the 3 projects.
Unit training manager and the reserve travel system.
Or LOEs to prove concept. And which was the one that we committed to trying to explore first?
Additional duty UTM.
Say that again?
Additional duty UTM. most, in
Okay.
use or flushed out or whatever.
Cool. Okay,
Easiest.
feels good.
And who are our points of contact going to be for those? Is
That's
that-
working with Joe and Jim to figure all that out.
Okay.
Yeah, we discussed building the framework, the template, getting everything ready, and then letting them bounce off and provide feedback, right? Which is what we agreed was gonna be our strategy with those two going forward. Open call model, reframing, promoting, replacing, getting, so we already discussed that one. Spark tank launch and design, we have it up there. Gain overview use cases, we did that. We have not talked about gain demos, Crystal. And then we covered Tech Connect.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think the game demos are gonna be, you know, kind of summarizing a lot of the slide deck that you're building, that you're working to clean up, to condense that to, like, to say the top 3 or 4 slides for Ms. Lombardi on the tech that was just released. And
Yeah.
identifying the use cases that we've identified, like, oh, we can do this now, and we can do that, like, and generate that excitement, but pause, sir, you asked for demos based off of what we have been able to provide, and
Yeah.
here we go.
so it begins with, just a reminder, gains this, not that.
Mhm.
Here's the distinction between these other things. Here's the idea of a toolkit. Here's all the capability you have in gain/crowd vector, and then here's some examples. And give, so that
right.
we're gonna go from 30,000 to ground level with
Right.
him.
And be able to speak to what you can on Vision and even SharePoint, and just be ready to answer questions, because I'd hate for us as a team or you not to be able, as your unbiased hat, to be able to
Oh, yeah.
advocate for those, so, yeah.
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
it's no different than the A3 conversation here.
Yep.
Like, I'm not trying to roll over on everybody. I'm not trying to
We don't need
impede
to go down that
everybody's
history again, we get
Yep.
it, yep,
Uh-huh.
yep, but you didn't say that in your overview, so I just wanna make sure that we
Yeah.
get that.
Okay.
There's one other caution that I'm gonna throw out. Y'all can hear me, Greg.
He's listening.
Mr. Lombardi is a project manager. So as soon as we start laying out what capability, he's gonna wanna see deadlines and milestones and a project plan. Ultimately, he wants a project plan. So let's keep that in mind when we're throwing things out.
Less is more sometimes. So there's
Well,
a right
but-
balance.
So go a little bit.
I'm not saying that when we brief him, we have to have that, but what I'm saying is, that's gonna be the next thing. If during that initial briefing, he's gonna say, just like you told us, Crystal, I want a project plan.
Yep.
Right, so whatever we brief him on, whatever, you know, we can say, well, we're gonna put these capabilities on, keep that in mind, that he's gonna want that project plan. And Bruce already told him that that's likely to slip. You know, it's gonna keep slipping to the right because of the limited bandwidth that everybody has.
Yeah.
And the funding and everything else, but
And one way to come at that too, if he asks for those or he starts asking you for details, because he may or may not, he may ask for some specific time and say, sorry, we're here to give you demos, we didn't come with those dates, but we're working on those dates and we can follow up with you. I mean, there's just ways to come at that.
So just to be clear, so let me give you an example. So if we walk through and say, we have all these use cases, ways to configure the platform to provide value for the Air Force. Like, there's no project plan for that.
Yeah.
We can provide that capability today. That's like saying, I get into this brand new car and there's so many features, I don't even know what they do. And I'm sitting down and going, okay, let's walk through the screen again. And this is what this one does, so that's what we can do. Now, if they want to start diving into the future of the product, or what capabilities could we do if we combined X versus, X plus Y, and that gets into, at some point you start to ask about unfunded requirements. There's no project plan for that. It's like, you want to talk about unfunded requirements, let's start talking about those requirements and then talking about how you're gonna fund them. Other than that, this is what you have purchased today, and we can do a lot more than what we're doing. That's really what the game demo should look like.
I can,
And Jim has joined us. And Jim, we can't hear you though. I can put you on a 3-way call because for some reason when I plug in my, webcam, it disables my, microphone, so, Jim, I'm dialing you on a three-way. But I would also say that, merging calls. Alright, can you hear us, Jim?
Alright.
Alright, cool. So I'd also say like, so if you have an idea of how you would like us to frame this for executive leaders, now that this capability is unleashed, we'd be looking for your perspective on how we could actually provide value to senior leaders and your counterparts. Something that we hadn't been able to do before. So we're happy to continue to now mesh these things and all of these ways that we identified this past week of how we could use and leverage this technology. We can do a report back, and then we'd also like from the senior Geo SES perspective how we could use, because we had talked about this week, like at one point we said we wouldn't expect Geos or SESs to be in the platform, but then that started to change as the week went on as we found these other use cases. So what is that right balance from a SES? Could you give us some insight or scope from your peers, right, to keep in mind? And so that keeps that dialogue open and gets them thinking about it as well and gets them engaged in it as well.
I'd like to follow up on this a little bit, Greg. Hey, Greg, I think you were just talking about, potential use cases and then talking about unfunded stuff that might be there. I don't think that's really the focus of this presentation and this project plan. I think the presentation of the project plan is how do we bring all these connections together? How do we bring our value stream together? And what might that timeline look like? Like if we wanted to have, one of the projects be RPA, what does the RPA initiative, if you will, look like? So we're going to assume that the technology is there, and if it's not, that's a whole other thing. Right?
Yeah, agreed.
But I think on this timeline, this project plan, it's, what are the competitions we want to create, what are the campaigns we want to create, and how do we want to do that using your tool, and what do we think the value added of your tool is? And I think, yesterday we pretty much discussed that on both days. Your tool's going to be able to bring us together and connect all our pieces, our unit commanders, our senior leaders, senior executives, our FCOs, in ways that, drive involvement, drive interest. Does that make sense?
100%. So we're the gain tier team here is here to support your projects. We can provide some component of what your overall mission vision project is, and I think we're on track.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're gonna carefully tap dance around that because what we're talking about is our game demos to Mr. Lombardi. That's next Friday. And that's different than our top 3 project plan that we owe him in 2.5 weeks from now. That's it. No, that's okay. So we will. So at some point they do have a similarity, and we'll give a little bit of a prelude to what we're going to mention in our team plan. But we're gonna have to really carefully tap dance around and not give Mr. Lombardi the opportunity to dovetail into something that the presentation wasn't geared for.
You're having a meeting with Mr. Lombardi next Friday on game capabilities?
Game demos. He asked 2 months ago for game campaign owners to give a demo of how they've been using it. So we have like ArcWorks.
Okay.
I've been putting it in the war for a while now. It's
Is this
Yeah.
to be? Is this part of the overall FUD right now around? Hey, we have vision and gain. No, like
not
it's
that
part
I'm
of the
aware.
general confusion.
on
like,
an
kinda-
MG update 2 months ago. He
Yep.
just said I would like some demos.
Okay.
And that's all the requirement. And so on the MG updates I did last was, sir, we're scheduling this, and remember, because I told him we were having those prep sessions, and he was like, hey, I'm really concerned about how like bureaucratic you're making this, and you're having all these prep sessions. I really want this to be easy peasy. People just come in and just show me so what,
Okay.
So other than that, I don't know what wild cards we're gonna get from Mr. Lombardi. I
Okay.
really don't.
No, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Good.
But
Right.
if we're telling him about some other unleashed capabilities in the opening of that, there's room for a slippery slope.
But there's, I mean, we want our leaders to be aware of the capability, right? And to kind of imagine, because like, he can't go and get excited and then talk to other leaders about this exciting capability that SAF-MG has if he doesn't even understand it, right?
Yeah.
So,
And it's gonna
we
take him
can-
more than once to hear it
Yeah.
to absorb it.
sure, yeah.
Mhm.
So we're gonna give him the landscape, and then we're gonna give him tangible examples, and he's gonna start to make those connections. Cool. All right. So we made a ton of work on PPSM and Open Call. We talked about rebranding. We talked about the PML and PMO.
Actually, Greg, that's PML, PMO?
Huh?
MPO.
PML, MP.
Yes, and the MPL.
PML was right.
Yeah, the PMO is
And
right.
it's
PMO is
MPO.
MPO.
Master Process
MPL and
Office.
M-
MPO.
And Greg's
Master
tired.
Process Library.
Greg's tired.
And
Let
the,
me help you out here. Is it Master Process Library?
Master
Yeah.
Process Officer,
It's
Process
Process model.
MPO.
It's PML, MPO.
That's what I thought. I was like, I don't think that there was a name change
Oh.
here.
I keep transferring.
Process model library.
PML,
Yeah.
MPO.
Perfect.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Oh, and what are all those words after with initiative FAQ
Yeah, so
under PMO?
it's actually
I'll
a
clean this
process
up in a minute.
model library, and the leading process catalog.
A leading process. Yep. Okay.
Then we got LPC.
But,
Yeah.
but I do like the NPO better actually, but I just don't wanna go there.
Yeah. Cool.
Just keep the continuity.
No.
Don't confuse us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think of the catalog and in the audience, but no, that's perfect. Okay, so before we dive into SparkTank, I think that kind of, I mean, there's some things that we didn't get to, which is totally fine. We had a lot to cover. Touched on some in important ways, but I don't think we established some clear agreements or deliverables. This marketing plan and strategies, that's something we clearly didn't touch, and that's okay. We'll find other time to talk about that.
Well, I think as we squish all this together into your report, and as these things start to come out, like we use the Spark Tank 24 as a part of the campaign and the market plan, you know, like it just naturally is an output.
Yep. Great. Anything else that we want to put in those three buckets over there? Okay. So we agreed that we're going to, we came up with a schedule. Draft. We modeled the 8-step and identified step 5, 6 as the qualifying step. For ST24 qualification. Okay, we iterated on the workflow. And agreed that we would diagram and build a working model, right?
I call it timeout.
Yep.
Did Mr. Lombardi ask for a demo of a current person using? That's different to me than a working demo.
Let me make sure I understood your question. Did Mr. Lombardi ask for demos of current use cases of how we're currently using game by the campaign owners?
So I don't know what we've lined up, but we can demonstrate Open Call, ArcWorks,
Well,
Project
yeah,
Funding, like
yeah.
some of these different ways of
Yeah,
using
we've
the
got
platform.
Gain
Yeah.
Open Call as it currently stands, up until obviously this past week is just as a game changer. So
Yeah.
that's can't go there. And then same thing with WEC. I've invited WEC. We've got ArcWorks, SIFMIF, Dress and Appearance.
Perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we've had the past 4 weeks. The standing Tuesday morning sessions at 9:00. Y'all's 8:00. Just to invite the people to come in and just talk through and just kind of get their head in the game, so they're not talking at one for 20 minutes each. They get
Yeah.
5 minutes each, and they just need to figure out their talk track.
Okay.
So that's what that is for, Joe. Now it would potentially, Greg could in his opening slides, in his discussions, talk about these tools, and then at the end of the demos, then kind of relate those to, now that we have all these features, here are some things that we could do for these campaigns, now we're lockstep with the COTS solution, COTS software, and then you could give a demo behind the scenes off of what you have to say. Here's now what we can do, and then we talk about, again, sir, we talked about all these other things that now we're gonna do, but that's not what this meeting's for. The team's gonna update you on their flight plan stuff in a few weeks. So, yeah. Does that help, Joe?
Yeah, you want to make sure we get the logic right, because we are going to have real people that are using the system, demo to Mr. Lombardi, what the capability is. And then I think the transition is, this is what we've learned from that, and these are the capabilities that we have to close some of the gaps that we currently have, right? And now we can do a full demo of, hey, these are how, this is how it's going to work in the future, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, Joe, to slightly reframe what you said, what I hope we can do is explain to Mr. Lombardi, you have this awesome capability and you may not know all of its, how powerful it is. Here's a high level idea of how powerful it is. Here's some actual examples by the people benefiting from its capability. They're in a demo, explain in their own words how they're using this powerful capability to meet their business mission needs.
Based off of what was available to them
Yep.
up until
And
this month.
and then we'll close out by saying we could be serving other leaders in other parts of the organization if only they knew how powerful this capability is that SAFMG has made available to them. And I think if Mr. Lombardi walks away with one ask or one thing that he could do, it would be to be a proactive champion of this capability that he's paying for.
So what would be a specific use case example other than Spark Tank that in the PML, right? Because that's a build out, that's a huge project. So a simplified use case that he could use it for, we should probably be ready to offer something up.
I think there's just examples like in our PMO meeting, Jim pointed to something on a slide and he's like, a commander comes in, they set their strategic priorities for the 2 years that they're going to be in the seat. Well, what do you do next? Like, how do you communicate to that workforce? How do you engage your workforce? How do you drive that your strategy home to your workforce that this is important to me while I'm here in the chair? Well, somebody like Mr. Lombardi in interacting with senior leaders could be promoting that idea, or just be like, did you know we could just this one thing, we could drive transformation across the workforce by doing nothing more than just giving them this one extra tool in their tool belt to drive value in the workforce. So, sorry, Jim.
And I think to add to that, so in the NPO call yesterday, Crystal, your perspective of the, from your officer days when you were the PA person, right?
Yeah, NPF commander.
Yeah. So yes, okay. So that's the perspective that we want to ask that commander when he comes in, and link him to their NPO structure and all the training and everything else that we have. So just not really bring everything together at the right. The key there is bringing it all together at the right time. And I think that's the key capability that we can provide.
Yeah. Yep, we don't need number one is obvious, we just want Mr. Lombardi to be like, okay, cool, yeah, like, we spend this money and this is awesome. And then number two is like, you have this you have this multi-tool, and if we could ask you just to pull, just look at the multi-tool and pull one of the tools out and show everybody how awesome it is. I don't know, if it's the screwdriver, or the pliers, or the knife, or he doesn't have to promote all he doesn't have to do demos, he doesn't have to do the full capability. We just want him to be like, this is awesome, and when I'm talking to the people, before a meeting, after a meeting, at lunch or dinner with my colleagues, and like, I'm gonna talk about this cool capability that SAFMG provides to the Air Force, and encourage leaders to know more, right? Go to the game team, go to SAFMG, and learn more about this capability. Even if you can't explain it, we don't care about that. Just tell them to come knock on our door. Okay, Spark Tank 24, schedule draft, model 8 step, iterate on workflow diagram, build MVP. Okay, Joe, there is something that we need to talk to you. We modeled out in more detail the kind of a revised version. So we covered that 8 step yesterday, and we were doing some kind of deeper analysis of what the idea owner's inputs are. And I think the conclusion I came to, and hopefully the team agrees with this, is that the knowledge a training practitioner would have, they could look at those forms and be pretty comfortable with it, but they're probably still way too overwhelming and way too complex in their kind of being generic enough that it would be really hard for them to kind of like feel comfortable and navigate, even if they have an assigned consultant guiding them through the process. So we've decided that we're going to kind of split those instructions, and our Spark Tank workflow is going to have these 2 parallel work streams, one for the consultant and one for the innovation, the ideator. And we're going to narrow down the ideator's view to, we want just this specific kind of information. So on one of the steps, it's like, does your problem have measurements? Well, we're going to say, describe the measurements, like describe how you're going to measure this problem today and in the future, so that you can tell if your countermeasure or solution had an impact on the problem. And the consultant will understand measurements and will be a coach and a guide and do all those things, but like, that's the thing that we want, one of the things on that step that we want the ideator to understand and document in this refinement process. Okay? So we're gonna go through the kind of those questions and answers and get really way more targeted and narrowly focused on the things that we think matter for a Spark Tank proposal.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay, so we will be coming back to you with some ideas on how we want to do that. We'll be seeking your expert opinion on that. But yeah, we're going to do that effort first and then circle back to you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Perfect. And then Joe, one more thing about functionals, because we talked about that yesterday. It's the MagicCom functionals. So just a second. And then we're going to add the other roles. Other roles. did we make a different conclusion about so we talked about the functionals, we talked about the MAGCOM functionals and the Air Force functionals and that research step, which Joe was involved in that conversation the day before. And then we started talking about OIs and cross cutters. Did we change any of our conclusions about the functionals that we needed Joe's input on? I don't think we did we? No,
I don't know.
Just how we were hoping to spread out the tasks maybe, so we don't overburden you.
So
Yes.
that was the OIs and cross cutters. Remember, we have the MAGCOM functional managers and the Air Force functional managers, and
We go to the front office and task them to find the right people.
because there's a research component, which is, are you actually already working on this problem, and if so, what are the projects, right?
I don't think that we identified what the belly button specifically was gonna be for that, cause I remember you talking about being able to go into the gal
Yeah.
and spread it out so
Yeah.
you could see, you could go up or down.
Yeah, the limitation, so we picked back up on that today based off of the roadmap for Spark Tank, and I pegged where I believe Bru's vision for and asked for the core functions and the cross-cutting threads, right, to be laid in, and so it's a yes, but realize that at some point that's going to be a resource requirement back on me and Bru, because nobody else knows how to do that.
What I also caught back on you and Brew was the ability to categorize something based on its OI.
Yeah.
To say it belongs here, and it's this kind. In the OIs, it's this one of these, or it's a cross cutter, or it's
Yeah.
both, or it's these
Yeah.
three things.
So I think that, yes, I am not as strong suited in that as Brew is. I know, like, Isabel, I know a lot of folks on AFWorks are really smart up on the OI, so I think that our pool of candidates for that, for tagging and assessing that, is broader than Brew and I, but when it comes down to what Brew's looking for finding the functionals to support these ideas, for that functional validation,
Yeah.
that's gonna be on Brew and I, cause,
Okay.
yeah,
Got
we
it.
have not been able to find anybody else to help us with that.
Okay.
They can, they're just not as quick.
And then we need SMEs for OI cross cutter. Okay. All right, and then I think the final thing is just firming up the schedule, which I'll work on. Anything else that we want to add to Spark Tank? Thomas, let's FAQs, discussions,
Oh, yeah.
product, support, the problem collection.
So, I'm connecting with Lisa Crawford wrote back, actually, by the way, about the graphic support. Lisa Crawford said, A26 EG graphics team has been known to provide assistance depending on the job. Mr. Tim Alger is the team lead. You can check with him to see if it's something that they can support. So between A26 EG and A57 and Space Force, I still need to go out and make those connections and see what they're able to support to help for Spark Tank.
Okay.
Yeah, like Ty's presentation yesterday, and we need to see where Bru's head mindset is at with what Ty was briefing. And I think that goes into the OI selection and the 6 types of wars and stuff like that, to kind of like pique the interest of our senior leaders when we really get to that down select subject matter expertise board.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a conversation for the parking lot that we need to have with Bru, probably on Monday, so I need a note to self or Tuesday, if he's there. Is Bru on leave next week, guys? I think he's back for a few days and then he's out again, working from Tampa stand.
Yeah, something like that, yeah, he's on leave through Wednesday. And then, so Thursday, Friday, he's working. And not too long after that, in July, he's out for a while, right?
Yeah, I think
Is he gonna be out?
he's taking leave, but he's still gonna be working, but getting to cherry pick what he wants to work on, so, that way he can tell
Yeah.
Mr. Lombardi, I'm on leave. But he's still gonna continue to work on a few things and meetings,
Yeah, he splits up.
Yeah.
Probably.
yeah.
Alright, I think we can add to this after we get it written up, right? If we have to clarify